My name's Henry Hitchings, and I'm the author of several books about the English language. Most recently, a book called The Language Wars, which is about arguments over the correct use of English. As a first language, there are about 400 million speakers of English, mainly in Britain and America, but also in countries such as Australia and Canada. And then as a second language, it's a little harder to say. I think we're now certainly talking about 1 billion people. It may be that as many as 2 billion people globally are actually trying to learn English. I think native users of English tend to think of the language as belonging to them. I think that's a bit strange. I think of language as universal property. There are so many other people using the language. I think it's sensible now for British English speakers to think of themselves as looking after the language rather than owning it. Globish is a word that was made up by a French businessman called Jean-Paul Nérière. It refers to a form of English which is used essentially for business purposes. It has a vocabulary of 1,500 words, and it's for communication between people who don't have English as their native language. I don't really like the word Globish very much. I prefer World English, which is an idea that's rather older and rather easier to understand. I think that in the future, most people who use English will carry around 2 versions of the language with them, and they will exist side by side. There will be an international form, which they use when they travel for purposes of business and perhaps in education, and then there will be a local form, which expresses their local identity and their social ties. There's still an advantage in being a native speaker of English in terms of confidence and fluency. Also, the range of vocabulary and the complexity that is available to you as a native speaker is important in creative activities and also in academic life. Nevertheless, native speakers need to be sensitive to the fact that some of the things that they do don't travel very well and cause problems for non-native speakers. For example, there are phrasal verbs. The verb to get can be used in some surprising and not very predictable ways. Expressions like to get on with, to get across, to get down, to get off don't do what you would expect them to do, and it's something that can cause confusion for people who are learning the language. Native speakers need to have a greater awareness of that than they perhaps tend to at the moment. I think it's very useful for there to be a global language which enables people to communicate across cultures. And English has some very positive associations. Traditionally, for instance, it's associated with democracy. Having said that, for some people, English has less positive associations with capitalism, with cultural imperialism, and with globalization. A lot of people assume that English will just continue to spread and spread, but it faces challenges from some other languages which have a global reach: Mandarin Chinese, Spanish, and Arabic. I think the future of English is fascinating. The key point really is that the centre of gravity is moving. In the past, all the really important things that have happened to the English language have happened in Britain and America. In the future, that's not going to be the case. The most important things will happen in China and India and other emerging world economies.